Chauntae Davies walked into that hearing room carrying a truth so heavy that the entire world had spent years trying to ignore it. And the moment she opened her mouth, you could feel something shift, because this wasn't a lawyer, a politician, or a commentator. This was a survivor who had lived through the kind of darkness most people only whisper about. And now she was standing in front of the most powerful people in the country, daring them to face what they'd spent decades pretending they couldn't see. She didn't start with soft details or distant memories. She started with the weight of survival, pain that never fully fades, betrayal that came from every direction, and a system so broken that someone like her had to become her own advocate just to be heard.
Hello, my name is Chauntae Davies, and I'm here before you today as a survivor of decades of pain, trauma, and betrayal at the hands of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, and the people who enabled them, and a government that for far too long refused to help. In 2002, I was living in California, a young woman with high aspirations of becoming an actress. I was already beginning to make a name for myself in the industry. A person I trusted, someone I thought was a friend, invited me to meet a powerful woman who could help advance my career. That woman happened to be Ghislaine Maxwell. I was asked to give her a massage, though I had almost no experience, and when I did, she praised me and promised introductions to someone enormously powerful, someone who could change the course of my life, and that man was Jeffrey Epstein. At first, I was an excited young woman on top of the world. Epstein flew me to his private island. He listened to my dreams, promised to help, but his promises came with a catch. The abuse began. He told me to keep it secret. He manipulated me with quid pro quo I did not consent to, but I felt I had no one to turn to. He was too powerful. I was just one of the many young women trapped in his orbit. I was even taken on a trip to Africa with former President Bill Clinton and other notable figures. In those moments, I realized how powerless I was. If I spoke out, who would believe me? Who would protect me? Epstein himself was the most powerful leader of our country. Epstein surrounded himself, with the most powerful leaders of our country and the world. He abused not only me, but countless others, and everyone seemed to look away. The truth is, Epstein had a free pass. He bragged about his powerful friends, including our current president, Donald Trump. It was his biggest brag, actually. And while what I endured will haunt me forever, I live every day with PTSD. I live as a mother trying to raise my child while distrusting a world that has betrayed me. This kind of trauma never leaves you. It breaks families apart. It shapes the way we see everyone around us. But one thing is certain, unless we learn from this history, monsters like Epstein will rise again. There are files, government files, that hold the truth about Epstein, who he knew, who owed him, who protected him, and why he was allowed to operate for so long without consequence. Why was Maxwell the only one held accountable when so many others played a role? Why does the government hide this information from the public? This secrecy is not protection, it's complicity. And as long as the truth is buried, justice will remain out of reach. That is why this bill matters. Passing it will, bless you, ensure that the suffering of survivors is not in vain. Passing it will bring accountability, transparency, and prevention. It will help protect the next generation of predators who seek to place themselves above the law through wealth, influence, and connections. This is not just my story. It is about every survivor who carries invisible scars. It's about the weight we live with daily. It is about the families broken and the futures stolen. So I ask you, President Trump and members of Congress, why do we continue to cover up sexual abuse and assault? Who are we covering for? Let the public know the truth. We cannot heal without justice. We cannot protect the future if we refuse to confront the past. Thank you.
From the first sentence, you could tell she wasn't just telling her story. She was about to expose the silence that protected the people who hurt her. Back in 2002, Chauntae was just a young woman in California chasing a dream, acting, performing, building a life for herself. She had talent, drive, and the kind of ambition that makes you believe anything is possible. And for a moment, it was. A friend she trusted promised her a chance to meet someone influential, someone who could help her career soar. That someone turned out to be Ghislaine Maxwell, polished, confident, and connected in ways Chauntae could never have imagined. Maxwell asked for a massage, strange, unexpected, but framed as harmless. Chauntae had almost no experience, yet Maxwell praised her, assuring her she had a special skill. She promised introductions, doors opening, opportunities most young actors never even get close to. And behind all that charm was the biggest promise of all: access to a man who could change everything. That man was Jeffrey Epstein. At first, it felt like the start of something incredible. A private island, private planes, access to circles of power she didn't even know existed. Epstein listened to her dreams. He offered help. He whispered promises that made her believe her career was about to take off. But every offer had a hook buried inside it. The mentorship quickly became manipulation. The so-called opportunity turned into a trap. The abuse he forced on her came wrapped in the language of secrecy. He insisted she couldn't tell anyone. He framed everything as a twisted exchange, offering success in return for silence. She didn't consent to any of it, but she felt trapped. Standing up to him felt impossible when the entire world seemed to bow in his direction. That it wasn't just the isolation or the manipulation. It was the people around him, the people he surrounded himself with, the powerful, the wealthy, the globally recognized names who came and went without ever asking questions. At one point, Chauntae found herself on a trip to Africa alongside former President Bill Clinton and other high-profile figures. She was surrounded by people who could have protected her, but in those moments, she realized how truly powerless she was. Who would believe a young woman still trying to build a career over a man connected to presidents, billionaires, and global leaders? Who would stand up for her when his circles seemed untouchable? Rumors have long suggested that Epstein loved bragging about his connections. He would reference influential friends, powerful circles, and people whose names alone could silence entire rooms. According to Chauntae's testimony, these weren't casual mentions, they were flexes. Proof that he operated above the rules everyone else had to follow. And when someone like that tells you no one will believe you, you can understand why many survivors stayed quiet for so long. Her trauma didn't end when she left his orbit. It didn't fade when headlines finally caught up to what survivors had been saying for decades. To this day, she lives with PTSD. She lives with distrust woven into every part of her life. She raises her child while carrying scars the world cannot see. Because this kind of trauma doesn't disappear. It reshapes who you become, how you see people, how you move through the world. But the most chilling part isn't just what she endured. It's what she exposed next. There are files, government files, containing details about Epstein's network. Files that could reveal who supported him, who protected him, and who turned a blind eye while countless young women suffered. Files that, even now, remain largely hidden from the public. These documents hold answers to questions that have haunted survivors for years. Why was Maxwell the only one held accountable? Why were so many others who played a role never charged? Why does the government keep this information sealed? Who benefits from the secrecy? This isn't protection. This isn't privacy. As Chauntae said directly, this is complicity, because as long as the truth stays hidden, justice remains out of reach. And survivors are forced to move forward without closure while people with influence remain shielded. That's why this legislation matters so much. Chauntae didn't walk into that room just to tell her story. She walked in to make sure survivors everywhere didn't have to live in silence anymore. She demanded transparency, not for revenge, but for prevention. Because if the world refuses to learn from the past, another monster will rise. Another network will quietly form. Another generation will pay the price. Her message wasn't political. It wasn't partisan. It was human. She spoke for the countless survivors who never got the chance to be heard. She spoke for families forever changed, dreams shattered, futures stolen. She spoke because she's tired of living in a world where predators thrive behind closed doors while their victims fight alone. And then came the question that froze the room. Why do we continue to cover up abuse? Who are we covering for? She didn't point fingers. She didn't name names. She didn't accuse anyone directly. She simply asked why the truth continues to be treated like a threat. Her voice didn't shake. She wasn't afraid. She delivered a challenge, a direct call to every person in power who still hides behind excuses and sealed documents. If we want justice, the truth must come out. That if we want safety, transparency must be non-negotiable. If we want change, silence cannot win. Chauntae closed her testimony with a plea, a demand, and a warning all at once. We cannot protect the future if we refuse to confront the past. Her courage is a reminder that secrecy doesn't just hide mistakes, it enables them. And until every name, every file, every connection is brought into the light, the story isn't over. Thank you for watching. If you believe survivors deserve justice, and if you think these truths should finally be uncovered, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps amplify voices that have been ignored for far too long. Stay informed, stay aware, and stay with us as we continue uncovering the stories they never wanted you to hear.